Okay, right, we'll go through the topics that are going to be discussed, and it's based on the feedback that we've received from you. So we put the question out there, what matters would you like to be addressed? And the main topics that got brought up, which is what we will go through initially, are the new stadium and training ground update, transfers, general club finances, first team matters with the manager, and atmosphere and attendances at Kind Prince Foundation Stadium. Also great to see Mark Prince with us and wife Tazeen. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay, so after we've asked those questions, then it will be an open floor and you can ask whatever questions you like. It might be a follow-up based on the topics we've discussed, or it could be a completely different topic. The floor will be yours for you to ask those questions. So firstly, to get ourselves underway, Mark, from your point of view, 3 months into the job, should be switched on, 3 months into the job, how are you finding life as QPR manager?
Enjoying life as QPR manager, in truth, and intrigued by how the new squad do, how they gel together, and the reaction you guys have given us in terms of supporting the team, the new team, but also, for me, most as a manager, how you responded to the adverse times. We lost to Swansea, and you supported the guys off the pitch at the end, which meant a lot to the players, individually and collectively, and for us as staff, because you gave the support to the team, it means so much. So we say it in our programme notes and we say it on the radio, but it's very genuine. It's very genuine. The support is so important to us, home and away, and it means an awful lot to everyone involved with the club.
And Les, from your point of view as Director of Football on the football side of matters, how pleased are you with the job that Mark has done so far?
I think I'm extremely pleased when you think about the turnaround in terms of personnel that we've had at the club. Mark came in sort of like understood what we were trying to do and where we were trying to go. We had to change a lot of players, and sometimes bringing a load of players in, it takes a bit of time for them to settle in. But credit to Mark and the staff. They bedded those players in pretty quickly, and we're seeing the results on the pitch.
And Lee, from your side, from a business point of view, there was a lot of transfer activity over the summer, players in and players out. From that angle, how pleased are you with the job the manager has done so far?
No, I think we've done a really good job in terms of creating the headroom that we needed to get the players in, because obviously, if you went back 10 years, it would just, the question of transfers would be, well, how much does the board want to spend? With the advent of financial regulations now, it's a lot more complicated than that. So you're moving a lot of pieces of the puzzle around to create the room you need to get the players in that you want for the future. So really pleased with it.
Okay, great. Well, we'll start with the main topic that has been brought up, and that is with regards to the new stadium and the new training ground. A number of people asking very similar questions. So firstly, we'll go with Solomon Rich, who contacted us. What is the current situation with the Linford Christie Stadium, and what is the backup plan if we are unable to get that site, as in how far away will we have to move?
Well, first of all, in terms of where we are now, putting the backup plan to the side, it is a council project. They're running it. They've brought in some consultants because they had the first round of consultation they did, where they got a vast majority of people going, said, yeah, we'd like to see a major development there, including a professional football club. So they're now looking at business plans and what that would actually mean, and they think they'll have something probably ready for the next round sometime in June. Now, first things first, what we always said is we want to remain in this borough. We want to stay as close to our spiritual home as we possibly can. So we will absolutely run this one to the end before we do anything, to make sure that we've done everything we could possibly do to make sure we're staying in the borough. So in terms of secondary plans, there's not a lot of property out there that would be conducive to developing into a modern stadium that's fit for what we need to do going forward. So, we're always on the lookout, but at the moment, we've got nothing in front of us that would say, oh, wow, that's the place we need to be. So I think we need to stick with what we're trying to do here with the Linford Christie and see that one through all the way to the end.
Is it a realistic possibility that we could move out of the borough?
It's always a possibility, yeah. The club needs to move on if it's going to survive, because we can't keep relying on external shareholder funding to keep this thing moving. And if you look at the results, if everyone wants to go and look at the company's results over the last 25 years, there was 1 year where there was a profit made, and that was just at the going into the new millennium when we divested Wasps. So we made like 360 grand, something like that. every other year it's been a loss. And I'm sure that 360 was because there was a goodwill payment because we divested Wasps. But every other year has been a loss. It doesn't make a profit. We've been in administration once. We were on the verge of administration until Mr. Batia here came in and bailed the club out. So it's when you look at 25 years of results and say, we're not making a profit, we can't make a profit here, we have to do something else if this club's going to be sustainable. Actually, forget making a profit. I'll settle for either a very small loss or break even, which is really what I'd be happy to be. But at the moment, it requires a lot of cash to keep this thing going. And
an update on the training ground and Warren Farm. What can you tell us?
Training ground, good news on that one. A week ago Friday, the last pre-commencement conditions were okayed by the council. So that's very good news. That took a bit longer than I thought it was going to do to get that over the line, but that is over the line now. Now there are a couple of things that need to get done, and I'll tell you, the reason that we haven't come out and said too much is because the opposition group is still very, very active in trying to do that. In fact, I brought the man's name here. There's a solicitor by the name of Richard Buxton Solicitors out of Cambridge. You don't know him, do you? Sorry. Andy sent out a little Cambridge connection. Who has come back at us with a couple of things. Says he represents a client, but won't tell us who the client is. So my philosophy has been to everybody here in the media department and in and to the council as well. I've told this, like, I'm not giving up any information because so far, touch wood, we've got, we've been going well. We've got to on the verge of where we need to be, and I'm not going to have an accidental own goal by accidentally giving these guys something. But safe to say, the training ground is the #1 strategic priority for us. It's great. Love to get a better stadium. We could do that, but our whole model is about player development. And player development start with a pitch and then the facilities that go supporting the pitch. So the sooner I can get a new training ground over the line for these guys, the sooner we've done that, the better off this club will be. And you just have to look at what we've done so far with the players coming up through the system. We had a board meeting today. We're talking about, we actually had 4 players from our development in the side this weekend in the starting 11. You had Joe, you had Ryan, you had some guy named Ezzy. You guys heard of him? He's all right. You ought to come and watch him. He's done quite well for himself. So it's fantastic to see the players coming up through the system, because for me that's what QPR has always been about, and that's what we've done. We've gotten back to our roots, and so we're bringing these players up through the ranks. And didn't mention Ilias, another fine player. I should have mentioned the 4th one as well. Ilias, fantastic job coming up through the system. The better the facilities we can get for these guys, the more of those kinds of players we can get through the ranks.
Mark, from your point of view, how important are the training facilities for a first-team manager?
Everyone talks about a stadium at any club, but the stadium is used once every 2 weeks rather. So every day they come to work at the training ground. So we have to make that environment of the training ground the best we possibly can to aid their development, as Lee rightly said. So they come to work every single day. Quality of the pitches, the quality of the baths, the menu, the analysis rooms, everything. Obviously, the bigger the club, the bigger the budget, the bigger the training ground. But for us, it's about the right training ground, which will allow these young players to develop at the best possible speed. And some will come on very, very quickly, some will take a bit longer, and we have to put a network in place, structure in place, that allows these players to develop at the right rate. And as Lee said, it's so vitally important for us.
And does it aid player acquisition as well?
It does. Again, they come to work every day at the training ground. So there's no. You look at Spurs, you look at Chelsea, you look at Arsenal. These magnificent training grounds. It attracts the player talent. The player pool is getting ever smaller. At all levels, it's getting ever smaller, and therefore it's a bigger fight to get a player through the door. And the training facilities plays a huge part in their decision, yes or no.
And just a further one on the stadium, Lee. A question from Jason Silkstone. Will we own the stadium if we move? And his view, we must stay in West London, but why must it be Hammersmith?
Well, Hammersmith, I think I said, it is the borough. That is our spiritual home. It is something I think that as a priority, we really want to try and do everything we can to stay there. The ideal solution would absolutely be we own the freehold of the stadium. That's what it would be. Someone had asked once before, would you consider a rental? It's like, well, you consider it, but if it's a rental, It has to be the right deal for the club. And I don't mean like a Coventry type deal, because that was absolutely the wrong deal. But it would have to be something that the fans would say, actually, I feel comfortable with that. We're talking a very, very, very long, 100-year, 200-year lease, something like that. A 20-year lease for me wouldn't cut it. So it would, if it were, it would have to be a very, very long-term lease. But first and foremost, everybody wants to have the freehold rather than have a leasehold. Thanks, Dad.
Okay, and moving on to some transfer questions. The first one, a nice easy one, from James McClenning, and we'll come to you firstly, Les. What's the chances of us keeping the on-loan players?
That's a discussion that we're having all the time. Myself and Mark and the rest of the coaches on who we want to keep. I think they've all got clauses in their contracts that mean they can be called back in January. But the good news for us is that all of them want to stay. All of them want to be part of what we're doing at the moment. So that's a positive thing for us as a club, that people want to stay and want to be part of what we're doing. So I don't think we're going to have too many problems. If there's a decision to be made, it's going to probably be more from our side than the players that are there wanting to go back. And
how encouraging, from a manager's point of view, is it to be in that position?
It is, but going back to your earlier question about the training ground, it's about the environments created by the QPR staff, and credit to Lee, Les, and all right the way down, the analysts, the medical team, the coaches, the sports scientists. They have to create the environment that these guys enjoy coming to work as lone players, and their parent club knows that they're developing. We have to send these boys back better players on the park, better people off the park. That's our job, our responsibility. The better we can do that job, the more chance we have of accessing the next tranche of players. So it's very good to hear, but it's an ongoing job. You can't, one mistake can ruin a relationship, and we have to make sure we're on top of everything.
And just on that training ground and the fact that we're trying to develop young players coming through, just imagine if everybody's on the same site and all of a sudden you've got an 18-year-old or 16-year-old and he's seeing Eze every day, he's seeing Elias Chair and he's thinking, I've got a chance of achieving that. That's the kind of environment you want. But at the moment we're on split sites, so they don't really get to see that. They get to see the headlines, they get to see the TV, but they don't get to see the players in real life every day, and that's important.
Okay, and a question from Adam Bennett. If required, will there be money available for signings in the January transfer window? I'll come to you for that one, Lee.
Depends on how much you guys spend. As I say, it's all about the revenue coming in. Now, I think last Fans Forum, someone asked us, are we going to be in compliance with FFP? And I said, this is the last time I answer that question, because it's silly to answer it. I know everybody wants clarity, everybody wants to be transparent, but sometimes transparency is not in the best interest of the club. So if you ask me the question, are we going to be in compliance with FFP? And I say, oh, no, we're not. That just tells the whole rest of the league, like, oh, fire sale at QPR, hot damn. So I'm certainly not going to be, which is why I can't confirm or deny it. The only thing I will say is, yes, we have room in the budget, or headroom under financial regulations to do something, but that doesn't mean you only do that. You only use it if the right thing comes along. So unless the right thing comes along, it's like keep it in your back pocket and use it this summer instead. That's what makes sense. So rely on our scouting system, director of football, and the manager to come up and say, actually, yeah, he fits the bill. This is somebody that will help take us forward, and the parameters are exactly right for on the finances. Fits in. We're not in breach of any regulations, so let's go ahead and do it.
Okay, a follow-up question from David Segal. As a result of the markedly improved on-field performances, there is much increased transfer speculation around a number of our players. Can the panel provide assurance that these players are not for sale, and moreover the club have offered terms to extend current contracts to those whose deals expire in the next 18 months or so?
I have to be honest, and every article and every time I speak to people, I say every single player at the club's for sale at the right price. It would have to be the right price for QPR. And we're in a situation where we have to do that. At some stage, we're going to have to sell one of our best players to be able to move the club forward. That's just a fact. We don't want to, but that's just what we have to do. So to say that no players for sale, no, I can't sit here and say that. but we'll try our best to keep the best players we can, keep all the players if we can, and add to it. That's what we'd like to do, but I think we have to be realistic about the situation we're in.
And that's a significant change from paying players to leave the club to be in the position we're in now.
Certainly is. You know, we had a board meeting today, and me and Hammett was just talking about it when we came in. We was having discussions about what people might be bidding for our players this January window, rather than who do we have to pay off to try and get out the door to make the place a better environment. So yeah, it is better.
And in terms of yourself, Les, and your 4 or 5 years at the club now as director of football, how have you found that period? Because by your own admission, there have been challenging moments over that time.
Yep, you've come out on many occasions and said, yeah, it's been tough. You know, I can only go back to being privileged enough to play football, and you know, I wanted to train every day, and then the icing on the cake was the play at the weekend, and to see people not wanting to do that, kind of found it hard to get my head around at the beginning. But I think we've cleared all that, and you know, we've gone past that now, and it's about moving on. And the players that you're seeing week in, week out, they look like they want to play for QPR, and that's what we want. We want more and more of them coming through the system.
And a question for Lee. This is from Lewis Pledger. What is the likelihood that we will sell players in January? Are we able to wait for big offers, or does the club need to bring in money in this window?
The likelihood is based on the offer that we receive. I mean, we're not going to sell anybody short. That's for sure. So I think that the lads that we have, Mark is doing a great job of enhancing their value. So that's the way it is. The one thing that sometimes people forget though is if someone does put that monster deal on the table, and you think, no, we need you here, for the summer. The monster deal for us is a monster pay packet for the player. And sometimes you do your best to make sure that player is kept on side and saying, this is the importance of it, this is how it is. But if you turn it down and say, that was my big chance, and their head goes, then it doesn't serve anybody any well. So it's always a very, very difficult job. It's dead easy for me from a financial standpoint to say, this is what we should be doing, but same as the board. But really, it's Mark and Les that have to manage the players on a day-to-day basis. So you have to take their input into account, saying, we need to keep them one side, or sometimes it's a temporary dip if they don't get what they want and they're right back into it. Just knowing the player and what makes them tick. Sometimes it's not a temporary dip and it takes a long time to get them back on track.
And I'm not sure who this is directed to. It's from Brian Nugent, who is responsible for all the great signings this year.
Well, what I've learned in my time here, if it's a good player that comes through the door, the manager's done a great job. If it's a player that the supporters don't like, what's that director of football doing? Like, he's useless. So I don't win anyway. So all I say is all I want is the football club to do well. So the players that come through the door, I think it's a combined effort. The scouts go out, they scout players, they tell us about them. We know some ourselves, and we put our heads together and we say, well, this player benefit QPR 9 times out of 10. We're hoping they do. Sometimes we get it wrong, but most of the time, the players that come through the door, it's a combination of all aspects put together.
And Mark, from your point of view, there was significant overhaul to the squad during the summer. You said it was a case of do we throw in a hand grenade or don't we, and we decided to pull the pin out. When you look at that and the players that you have brought in, you must be very pleased with how they've all come in, settled in, and are doing so well. Yeah,
I think for supporters it's easy to say, why don't we go and get player X, Y or Z? And the fact is they have to be the right quality on the field. They have to be the right character in the dressing room as well. So you can easily say, why aren't we signing that centre forward? Because he's a bad egg. He's a bad apple in the dressing room, and he'll spoil the harmony and the unity that we have within the club. So we have to choose wisely, as Les said. So much information goes into it. Their playing record, their off-field behaviour, what positions can they play in. We can't afford to really sign too many players who play in one position. So when you have Jeff playing centre midfield, centre half, or right in the 3, or you have Don Ball playing right back, centre half, defending midfield, that's great for us. So more and more of these players that can be flexible in their positioning will really help the club going forward. And a question for Lee. Great start to the campaign. How are the finances for a possible push in the new year?
I think I've answered that one already. again, there is some financial headroom in there, but unless it's the right player that fits in with the right financial parameters, then that's not something we'll be doing.
The cards are not being shown by the CEO. And a final one, just so I've asked it, from Lee David Perriton. Are we looking to get a centre forward in if Burnley sell Wells to Birmingham, or are we going to buy him?
Shall we hand the microphone to Emmett for that one? No, I think that the good news for us and Naki is we've had a conversation with him. He wants to be at the club. Listen, he's doing well at the moment, and there's going to be offers for him. We've just got to hope and pray that the offers ain't good enough to sway him and take him away. He said he's come in to do a job. He started that job and he wants to finish it. So we're hoping come January he's able to do that. And
Mark, when you have a player like Naki who didn't get the opportunity to really play at Burnley in the Premier League, when he's playing every week, he's scoring lots of goals, enjoying his football, that's a factor for a player to consider as well. I'm not speaking specifically in this case about Naki, but more generally.
Yeah, strikers are by nature, take this the right way, Les, they're selfish. They are. They want to look after, they want to score goals, and it's part of their personality. And he has to do the right thing for Naki. But there's a real link to the club. It's a bond with the club. He's enjoying being here, as Les rightly said. He's working hard, he's scoring goals, and they enjoy the adulation quite well. He's working so hard to receive that. So right now he's in a good place. If he scores another 5, 6, 7 goals by Christmas, and you're saying Naki scored 15, 16 goals in the Championship halfway through the season, he's a sought-after commodity. Simple as that. So we have to face the fact that that risk is always there. However, if he's on 15 goals by December, I'll be a very happy man, as will Les and Lee. So it works both ways. So you hope very much that everything falls into place for us. Right now he's in a good place, and long may that continue.
Great, and a question from Steve Borovach. Two-part question. Firstly, are we now free and clear of any FFP debt? Do we have any other debt? That's the first part to Lee.
Is he here tonight?
Steve Borovach?
I'm not sure. What do you mean by FFP debt? No. I mean in terms of it, because we had the fine, but. Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Do we still are? Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, we still have the fine. That's being paid in installments as we. So that will continue to go on. However, we also the shareholders have always made clear that's separate to the budget from the club. So that has no bearing on what we're doing, and the Football League has always made it clear your fine has no bearing at all on your FFP reporting requirements now. So really, it's kind of an off-the-book type thing where you've got the fine. So it's not really a debt. The only debt we have is the shareholder funding when they supplement the operating costs to the business when they chuck that cash in every month.
So just a follow-up question, if you couldn't hear over there, is have we learned from that so that we don't get in the same situation again?
Well, that's exactly why when I say there's headroom under the regulations, but unless it's the right deal, we don't do it. We will make sure we're in compliance with the rules going forward. As far as accruing debt, we got no choice. As I said, the last 25 years has only been 1 year when there's been a profit. So the club, by definition, requires external funding. The only way you get around that is if you really get a lot of big money in for player sales to cover the deficits. Because from an operational standpoint, we can't generate enough money to pay the bills.
Okay, and the second part of Steve's question, I like this part of the question. What are we going to do? This is a question to Mark. What are we going to do if we get promoted this season?
I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah. How many beers do you want, Steve? Is probably the question. Every club has the ambition to go up. Simple as that. There's never a bad time to be promoted. I see some people saying, is it too soon? It's never too soon to go up, that's for sure. But also there's a realistic expectation in where we are as a squad, and we're building young players like Ilyas and Bright and Mide, and these young guys are doing really well, but they'll take time to adapt to the Championship and also understand what we're facing in terms of quality of the Championship. You look at some of the teams, these are Premier League setups. You go to Leeds, you go to Fulham, so they're Premier League setups and Premier League squads. So it's our young guys are doing a fantastic job adapting to the challenge, and as I said in the programme notes, they'll have good days and not so good days. And that's part of their development, and that's why I said earlier, your support when they had a bad day, i.e. Swansea, your support is so important, because they're not going to come in and just rip it up every week. They're human, they'll make mistakes. Snacky's mistake at the weekend, he scored 9 goals for us, fantastic. He made a mistake, he's human. He won't do that again, but that's how we learn. So, as I say, it's we're making progress, I'm sure, I think you can see that, but it's all about having realistic expectation, hoping that brings us the rewards we all want, we all seek.
Great, and a question for Lee from Vid Kalovsky. How does the club hope to remain competitive in an increasingly more hostile financial division? Can we keep cutting the wage bill and stay in the division?
Well, again, it goes down to cutting our cloth with trying to develop our own players. And I think, we've made no bones about it. The cornerstone of our business plan is to take the rough diamonds, polish them up, and sell them on for a profit. That's how we'll get the headroom to do it. The good news is we're not the only people that the financial regulations apply to. So everybody's trying to do the same thing. There are some other clubs who found some ways to, in my opinion, get around it, the system. But I don't advocate what they're doing at all, because for me, to sell your stadium and do a lease back, your stadium is the only tangible asset you have. Your players are not tangible assets. They could get injured, they could run their contract out, they could go anytime. So for a club to sell its stadium and lease it back with the best intentions is a very, very short-term viewpoint, because you can only do that one time. Then what do you do after that? And also, if something happened where whoever the stadium got sold to developed whatever kind of financial problems, and they had to sell it to somebody else, well, then you've got the only tangible asset, which is divorced from the fan base altogether. And I don't like that. I don't like that plan at all.
Okay, a follow-up question from Paul Abbey. Will there be a need to further reduce wages at the end of this season? Is he just talking about playing staff, I'm hoping?
Damn. Look, it depends on the budget. A lot of things, a lot of people say, why do you go out with season tickets so early? It's like, because I want to know where we stand financially with the money that's coming in sooner rather than later, so we can start making plans for our budgets. So again, it's down to, depends on how much we generate. That's really what it comes down to, because gone are the days where you can just rely on the shareholders just running whatever kind of check they want. Now they might write a check to keep things going, but we can't go over those financial regulations.
Okay, and a further question on finances from Terence Hardcastle. How much money does the club receive from Sky for the televised home matches?
I'm not sure I can tell you that. I know the answer, but I'll tell you what I'll do. I will check with the league tomorrow morning and say, am I breaching any confidentiality provisions with Sky if I disclose the amount that we make, that we collect every time we're on television? And if they say, no, there's nothing in there, then fine. But if they say, well, no, there's a confidentiality provision, you can't say it, then I guess I can't. One thing I can tell you, though, what we do keep very close track of where we stand, like comparing games year on year. And so we've been on the West Brom match and the Brentford match. When you do a like-for-like comparison to those games last year, we're actually down 10 grand with the payment to Sky because of moving the dates and everything else. So what we got paid from Sky is actually £10,000 less than we collected from those two teams last year. So it is something that we do monitor and go through. But like I said, if I can do that, as long as I'm not breaching any confidentiality provisions in the Sky broadcasting contract, I'll put that out tomorrow.
Okay, and our final finances question, Marcus Exel. What other commercial products are being developed to increase match and non-match day revenue?
There's a lot of financial questions here. Did you know Mark has a background? You could ask him some of these questions to take the, We're looking all the time. We're looking at new things. But to be honest, most of the stuff we come up with is chipping around the edges. You may have seen that we've just announced our esports tournament, so it's trying to generate money like that. Retail is on the right track in terms of what we're doing with anytime we can get a new product in. We had the Monopoly board that we just launched, which went very, very well. We've tried to implement a bit more savvy in retail with things like flash sales. Since I've been here, we developed the Flexi Ticket campaign so that people who can't cannot devote the resources to a full-blown season ticket, can buy a flexi ticket and do it that way. So it's whatever we can really do to try and generate the revenue to keep us on track. By the way, I have had suggestions from fans about various things we could do, some of which have been implemented. I don't think for 1 minute that I have a monopoly on good ideas. So some of the stuff that comes in is like, yep, we thought of that and it may not work. But there are other things that come in, you think, that's a damn good idea, and we act on it. So anybody who's got ideas, we're more than welcome to receive them at the club.
Okay, and turning to first team matters, a nice easy one to start you off with, Mark. Why is Darnell Furlong now not with QPR? That's from Keith White.
I hope this comes across right. The price came in for Darnell, which hit what we thought was good value for Queen's Park Rangers, and we replaced Darnell with a free transfer player. And in terms of all the budgetary talk that Lee has discussed already, it makes good business for the club. So every player, and Les answered the question earlier, every player in the world has a value. It might be Messi at 500 million, or it might be a guy at $5 grand. They've got a price on their head, so the price came in for Darnell. It suited him, as Lee said earlier. It was a good move for the boy financially, but for QPR, it was the right value. And to go and replace him with like for like makes no sense financially, but we went out and got a free transfer. So you can see why we've done it. And hopefully, as I say, you wish Darnell well, great lad, but it was the right thing to do for QPR.
Okay, and a question from Chris Kemp for Mark. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you use statistical data to improve player and team performance?
It depends what you call data. So every day, for example, we've got the data from training. We'll see the loading, how far the boys run, how quickly they run. We'll get tests every day. They get weighed every day, urine tests every day. The boys live by data, feedback. You compare that data, you benchmark the data. So whether it's that type of data, Paul, whether it's comparisons in terms of set pieces, delivery. Today we get the rankings of where we are, fouls, set pieces, throw-ons, forward passes, square passes, everything. You can lose yourself in reams of data. What we try to do, as every club will do, is find the right data that works for us, that our boys can make sense of, and that we can apply in training and in matches. And that data can be very, very extensive, it can be very detailed, or it can be very basic. But hopefully it aids both on and off the pitch.
And from Richard Beddoe, did you expect the team to be so high in the table at this stage in the season?
It's nice to be where we are, but we're aggrieved that we've dropped some points, a few dodgy decisions as well, which I won't go into. But we've dropped a couple of points, and we feel we should be higher. But every team will say that. Middlesbrough will say they're in a false position within the league. So every team will look to be higher. What we have to do is take one game at a time. It's such a demanding league. You hear people say it's a relentless league. It really is. It never stops. And if you're slightly below par, you get hurt. And a couple of games we went to Leeds, and I thought we lacked a little bit of self-belief, and we got hurt, very simply. And we've hurt teams both home and away. So we're in a good position right now. We're only a third of the way through the season. We now face Fulham, Forest, Derby, Preston. I keep being told they're a tough run of games. I haven't found an easy one yet. I keep looking, and I can't find an easy game. So for us, we're in a good position right now. Let's see where we are come the start of May.
And just to you, Les, considering the work that was done over the closed season and the pre-season, are you surprised to see QPR where they are at this stage?
No, I knew we had some good boys. We had some good players, and we were bringing good players in. I'm pleased with where we are, and as you said, in recent times we've dropped a few points. The good thing is the boys are disappointed about the points that we've dropped, and they're believing that we should be higher. So there's a really good atmosphere, some great characters in there at the moment, and they're pushing each other on each and every day and trying to get the best out of each other, as well as the staff doing it. The players are now doing it for themselves as well.
And you mentioned the staff, Les, just coming to you, Mark. We speak about the good start that QPR have made. How key have your backroom staff been to that success?
The staff have been essential, really have, and I'm sure any business you work in, it's the same message, but they work tirelessly. These guys are in early in the morning, they leave late at night, they work hard, they go to games in the evening, they work from home, and they have to put the hours in. If you don't put the hours in, you won't have any joy in football at all, and it's a commitment. You have to have a love for the game, of course you do, but you have to work very, very hard. And they've played a key role. So the set piece at the weekend, for example, we've been good on set pieces. John Eustace does a lot of work on attacking set pieces. Gavin and Neil work very hard on defensive set pieces. So it sounds like the small details, but so very important, really important. If you look at the weekend, we've scored the goal. We've had Luke had that free strike on goal. Grant had the header in the second half, and Eze had the 2-on-1 and nearly scored at the near post. All of which had been rehearsed time and time and time again, and then filmed and shown to the boys in terms of data and the chance of success from a particular area of the penalty area. So a lot of work goes into it, and the staff deserve so much credit for the work they've done thus far.
And from Kevin Shepherd, what system do you think suits the current squad best?
Whoever's fit and available, basically. I mean that very seriously. If you lose Grant plays every minute, then you lose Grant for 4 to 5 weeks. Johan, you lose for 4 to 5 weeks. Tony, you lose. Then you have suspensions. So you have to play the best formation which suits the players you have available. And if it means Jeff dropping into the back line or Don Ball dropping back and Gail playing as a right centre-back, then we have to do it. Lee Wallace is a left-back playing left centre-half. We have to do what we have to do. I think you've seen we've favoured 4-2-3-1, we've favoured 3-5-2 as our full-back formations. But we have to adapt to our personnel being fit and available and who we're playing as well.
And just on that, how much focus is put on who you're up against and their style of play in determining what our style or approach will be?
It's got to be about us. It's got to be about QPR. That's got to be the emphasis. How do we hurt the opposition? What do we do well? What can we do better? Of course you respect them. And so today we looked at Fulham. We looked at Fulham here, how they play, the role of their fullbacks, the role of Mitrovic, etc., etc. So they have 10, 15 minutes film on Fulham. And that will carry on again tomorrow. And then when the boys come back after international break, it'll be how do we hurt them? How do we hurt them? How are we going to hurt them from X, Y, and Z areas on the pitch? And we put that into training. So our training drills will be related to how we think we're going to hurt Fulham, or hope we're going to hurt Fulham. So it has to be about QPR. Respect the opponent, always, but realise it's about us. If we impose ourselves on a game, we're a good squad and we'll hurt people.
And a question from Mick Geraghty. With the first team making a great start to the season, what plan is in place in the event of us getting promotion to ensure we can have a real chance of staying in the Premier League?
I'll have to deal with that problem when it comes around, if that's all right. So, great question. we'll chat over a nice cold beer.
We'll come back to you, Mick. A question from Terry Kerr and question to Les. With regards to scouting, do we have scouts in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland? As looking at the League of Ireland, there are potential talent there, which seems the Northwest teams in this country have more of an interest in.
Yeah, we have scouts in both areas, Scotland, and a lot of the time our scouts get information from people and say, right, we need to go there and watch this one and that one. I think that the teams in the Northwest tend to get them because originally that's where most of them went at the beginning. Man United got hold of a few of them, Man City, all the big teams up north, and so those teams want them to head that way. It's only recently that we've started, we got Ryan Manning. So, there are scouts all over the place, and we do our best. We try to spread our net wide, but we are restricted to how many scouts we can have, but we still get lots of information, and we go wherever we can to find the right players for QPR.
And you mentioned Ryan Manning. This is a very specific question about him for the manager from Donald McDonough. When are you going to give Ryan Manning a run out in his best central midfield position?
Oh, he's been so shocking at left back so far. I'm amazed I haven't done it already. I'm told he's done really well at left back by lots of people. So I guess as long as he's doing that and keeping someone like Lee out the team, we'll have to put up with it, I guess, for want of a better term. But again, go back to the earlier answer. In all seriousness, he's a flexible player. He can play left full back. He can play left wing back. He can play in midfield, defensive midfield, or in the 8 position. So you have a young guy there, really talented. I'm touching wood here, always available because he's a robust player, so he has a good fitness record, availability record, and very talented number of positions. So right now he's doing a great job keeping someone like Lee Wallace out of the team, but wherever we choose to play him, I'm sure he'll do a good job for the club.
And Ryan spoke recently about how Lee Wallace has actually helped Ryan to become a better player. Is that where the right sort of experienced player is just as important to the development of the younger players as coaching is?
It is. Les spoke about just now, and there's some good characters at the club. People like Lee, people like Angel, people like Mark Pugh, Jeff Cameron. Their experience is vast and varied, and they help the young guys. That's a good dressing room. You can get small cliques and you can get a very toxic nature, or you can have a really good unity within the dressing room. And right now, I think we've got a really good unity, and they take a lot of pride in mentoring the young players. So someone like Lee can be invaluable to Ryan Manning, to play in the old firm games, to play in internationals, to play for Scotland against England at Wembley, to have that level of player, pass on your knowledge. Mark Pugh playing in the Premier League, having promoted from Division 1 to the Championship, champ to the Premier League, pass that on to the young players. You hope that Ilias, Whitey, these young players, you hope very much they're bleeding them dry for all their knowledge. And if they do that, we'll all be in a good place.
And a further question for you, Mark, from Steve Webb. If money was no object, I can hear Lee twitching nervously. If money was no object, which Championship player so far this season would you like in your team?
Ooh, thanks for that. You know there's a curveball coming, and there's a curveball. I might surprise you. Obviously, you look at centre halves at the moment. You look at strikers. Someone like Romain Sawyers, someone of that ilk, is a very talented player who goes under the radar, does a fantastic job for the club. I know what he did for the West London team around the corner, and what he's doing right now. So those type of players are hard to find, robust, talented, good quality. So that type of player would be very attractive.
So now we know what the headline tomorrow is going to be.
One of many, I'd like to say. But.
Warburton in for Sawyers. A question on Olamide Shodipo. Is Mide close to a return to the first team?
Yeah, he's working hard. He had 9 weeks out. And this is a bigger question. So the player's out for 9 weeks. If the team are doing well, he has a harder job getting back in. You know, so Luke Amos comes in from Tottenham. We have Mide, our own. And while they're injured, young Ilias and Ebbs are doing a fantastic job, winning 6 out of 8 games. So it's very, very hard to get back in. And we've got to be fair to all the players. I don't care if they're 18 or 38. If they're doing a good job, they keep their place. And it's about competition. And go back to the Lee Wallace one. Lee wants to play, but he knows Ryan's doing a great job. So it's Mide's working hard. He trained well today. He's pushing hard, but so is every other player. And right now he has a tough job. He knows that. But I hope he responds really well, which he's doing. He works hard. He plays in a couple of 23s matches to get his fitness back. And he's ready for the first team.
Great. And turning to the atmosphere and attendances, firstly, just a question on the Kyan Prince Foundation Stadium, the rename. How pleased were the board, the club, with the way the fans embraced that decision? Because it's a big decision in terms of gifting the naming rights of Loftus Road, the history associated with the name, to a charity. How pleased were you with the way the QPR fans welcomed that decision?
I thought you guys were magnificent, and you know, with Mark, the family, very, very appreciative. And I cannot think of a worthier cause that it could have gone to. And now really it's just about utilizing that and trying to help that man who actually has solutions to problems that a lot of politicians don't seem to recognize, a lot of people, and enabling him to deliver those solutions. Because we know it's a major problem. There's a guy who has solutions to the problem, so let's do everything we can to help him out. And I think, so tonight we'll have a chance for donations to Mark as well. So I can't stress enough about how that, because I plan on digging deep, because otherwise my wife would just spend it anyway. So what the hell? Let's put it to a really good cause. So listen, everybody's got their own individual circumstances. I can appreciate it, but this is such a horrible thing that we have to go through with using another young person every single day. You know, the more resources we can devote at this, at people who know how to combat it, I think the better off we are all as a society.
Okay, there will be a bucket collection as you leave. Any change you have would be gratefully received.
Or not, you can go up from the change. I think Mark wouldn't object to that.
Okay, with regards to the attendances, are there persistent low attendance at the Kyan Prince Foundation Stadium a concern to the board? Because maybe this suggests we are not retaining occasional supporters who come once in a while. Secondly, do you believe we have a future playing at Loftus Road? We've discussed that. That's from Kyan Downing. So with regards to the attendances.
Yeah, in terms of, it's strange, because if you go back to the previous decade, you look at this decade from 2011 onwards, really, we've been kind of boing with having quite a few years in the Premier League, then back down, then back up. If you go before that, where we've had sustained runs in the Championship, the attendances have averaged between 12 and 14,000. So first of all, on top of that, whenever you have a relegation from the Premier League, your attendances will slide until you hit a certain point, unless the football is doing the talking, in which case it does. So in that respect, attendances are actually probably a little bit higher than I would have projected because of us going down off the Premier League path. And I think that's because of the style of football, or I think people are saying, hey, actually, this is really entertaining and fun to watch. So that is really for us going forward where we need to be and concentrate on that. As far as the occasional attendees go, you're absolutely right. Whoever wrote that question is spot on. The biggest problem I have, and I don't have any data before I got here, but one of the first questions I wanted to know is, how many first-time visitors do we get to Loftus Road every year? Now, we actually get quite a few, but the retention rate, because we always do follow-ups, is awful with them. And the number one reason that people don't come back, they complain about, is facilities. And at the top of facilities, I thought it would be lack of toilet facilities at halftime, or I had to stand in the queue for ages to try and get served. The number one reason is legroom, because people are just cramped in terms of that. And I think when you're trying to market to the modern day supporter who actually demands a lot more, I think I can watch it on TV, I can go somewhere else, there's a lot of ways I can spend my money, but I'm not going to go there and have my legs cramped and not be able to use the facilities at halftime. So it's difficult. It is very, very difficult. And another reason why I'm really, really pushing to try and do a new stadium that's a bit more comforting to the fans that come in and watch the match.
Okay, and a question with regards to atmosphere. How do you feel about having a section of the ground that is the main vocal support area? How important is it, in your opinion?
It's interesting. I've been in dialogue with a gentleman who's going to actually ship out shortly. He's in the Army, and we've batted some ideas around. Prior to that, I've had a couple of different fans groups come in, with various ideas that they tried to get up and running, but never really did it. A singing section and everything else. I actually think, having monitored the last couple of years, that we have diluted the support a bit by taking some of the people who are in Q and R block, and those guys down in you'll call it X block, we call it Y block, the very end block on Ellerslie Road, because actually the main part of the atmosphere, when I sit back and listen to it, still comes from Q and R, but then you have a little bit coming from down that end as well. I agree with the gentleman I've been speaking to. I would much rather have a concentration of fans. So we've come up with some ideas, and again, we had this discussion today at the board meeting. On top of those ideas, something a bit more major has come to the fore. They said, yeah, and the board have said, yeah, go ahead and look at this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm not a fan of just telling people, this is what we're going to do. I really strongly believe in talking to the fans. So we'll start a consultation process about a couple of ideas to try and get going and maybe moving some things around, and we'll see what kind of feedback we get from that.
Okay, this is from Harry Coxon. Our midweek attendances have been extremely poor, even though our on-field performances haven't. Have you thought about dropping the prices of tickets, or even under 16s for £1 to get the attendances up? There's nothing like a full house on a weeknight. That's Harry Coxon.
Supporters, in purely theoretical economics, it would be the lower the price, the more people you get in, and supporters hate hearing this, but there's very little correlation between price and attendance. It's all about the competition. Case in point, we played a couple of years ago Sunderland in the League Cup. We charged £6.70 for an adult, £5 for concessions, under 8s were free. We still only had 14,000 people in the ground. You can't get any cheaper with that. Premier League opposition, but it was the League Cup and it was a weeknight, and people just really didn't bother with it. So it's just what it's going to be. If we were in the Premier League and we're playing Manchester United on a Wednesday night, it doesn't matter. We're going to fill the stadium. It doesn't matter. And actually, it's been, that's proven, because even back in the Premier League days, charging an actual higher price, still people came because it's the Premier League opposition. But in the Championship, people are a bit more. Even people, they'll buy season tickets, but they know they're going to miss a few games. The good news this year is the number of no-shows is a lot less than what it has been in previous seasons. Because I got to be honest with you, when I first came here, we were getting at, you normally average between 15 and 20% no-shows on a given game. We were averaging 25 and something. There was one game we were over 30% no-shows. I thought, I've never seen this before. This year, the no-shows are way down, so people are actually buying the ticket and coming to the game. So, and Mark, that's credit to you, because it's the kind of football we're playing. We're saying, you know what? Before it was like, yeah, I paid for the season ticket. Can't really be out, it's cold, it's wet, it's whatever. I'll watch it on TV, it's whatever. Now it's like, no, I want to be there because I like what I'm seeing.
A question from Moreno Ferrari for you as well, Lee. In light of the recent racism at the England match in Bulgaria and also the Haringey Borough FA Cup tie, has the club received any correspondence back of any sort when the youth team walked off the pitch after their pre-season match in Spain, either from UEFA or the Spanish FA?
I think this whole situation is an international disgrace. Absolutely no bones about it. Football is one thing, and I really strongly believe in the power of football. It unites a hell of a lot more than it does divide. But racism is not to be tolerated anywhere, but particularly in this game. What disturbs me most is the absolute lack of urgency or caring that the governing bodies show. When that first got reported, we put out a press release. Les told Les got the report, and he told first, "You've done exactly the right thing. That's exactly what you should have done. Well done to you and the players." So we put out a press release in support of that. The very next morning, the first thing I got from UEFA was, "You have stated that UEFA and FIFA need to look into this. This is outside our jurisdiction. It's nothing to do with UEFA. You need to change your press release." Well, that's nice. It would have been nice, even if it wasn't in your jurisdiction, to say, these type of things cannot be condoned in any way, shape, or form. It's terrible that your players had to go through this, but you need to talk to FIFA, not us. No. First thing they did, drop the shoulder. Not me, mate. Nothing to do with me. I find that kind of despicable. So then, okay, we went to FIFA. 7 weeks later, a ridiculous amount of chasing emails, and finally me calling Greg Clark and saying, "Greg, can you please help me with these people because they won't respond to us?" FIFA say, "Oh, it's not us, it's a UEFA competition, you have to talk to UEFA." Okay, back to UEFA. We go back to UEFA. Who then handed it off to the RFAF, which is the Andalusian, which is where the game took place, region in Spain, football authority. Okay, so here we go. I know long grass when I see it. Now, the Andalusian Football Authority had, in fairness, started an investigation. They did send a couple of emails to us, which I didn't get. But when I did verify the one that came through, because I wasn't quite sure whether it was legit or not, went through IT, make sure it wasn't phishing or it wasn't going to compromise our IT systems. They said, no, it's a legit email. Bang, we sent all the information and the statements straight back to them. So that just went by the wayside for some time. As you can probably, most of you have heard, I went off on one a couple of weeks ago, in which I dumped everybody in it. And the Andalusian FA, after that, had an actual response. I don't know if anybody saw it on their website, in which they said, the delay is our fault. We never responded to their emails. They didn't get anything back from us until September 24th, 2019. They were the ones who kept chasing us. They took the unprecedented step of sending a representative here to have a meeting with me, and I owe them an apology. They have since then confirmed privately, because I said, "Who did you send to meet me? When did this meeting take place?" He goes, "I haven't met anybody from the CNFA, and you're telling everybody you met with me." I said, "Well, that actually never really happened. We were thinking about doing it, though." All right, okay. I'll tell you what, I know how things can go. Sometimes the right hand doesn't talk to the left hand. I'll give you a little bit of time to correct that. Nothing. I also have an email from UEFA dated the 10th of October that says, the Andalusian FA say they haven't heard anything from you. I'm like, well, really? Because in their press statement, they admit on September 24th, they had all the information. So these guys, in addition to being complicit in racism, they are liars. You put that on their goddamn website. They are freaking liars, and I'm not going to have it. You want to fight? I'll give them a fight. They want me to come out to Andalusia in Spain? Fine. I'll go out there and tell them face to face. In addition to racist, you're a bunch of liars. So, this is just an intolerable situation. And by the way, they now say, oh, we've given it to the Spanish FA to look at. So here we are, even by their own admission, when they say they had this stuff in September, we're in November now, and there still hasn't anything been done. And we have to go and look at those young men up at the training ground who this happened to and say, really sorry, lads, you must be wondering what's going on. Does anybody really care? I mean, if ever you're going to address racism, that is there are some people, who you'll never get to, but these are kids abusing other kids. Surely you must use this as an educational method. Surely, if you don't get to the kids, when will you ever break this? Oh, sorry, I went off on one again.
Les, coming to you on that, right at the start of that process when Lee was putting that release out, you said at that time, which was 15th of August, this is a waste of time. And you said, I don't even want my name on the press release. And 3 months later, when the follow-up one came out, you said, okay, I'll be part of this one because I was waiting for us to get to this stage. How frustrating is it for you? Because evidently it's not the first time you've experienced behaviour such as this.
It's a tough one because I don't want to go off on one as well, but I think my reply to FIFA, UEFA, and what I said was, what you might as well have done for the punishment that you've handed out. You might as well have stood in the terraces with those supporters doing Nazi salutes and the monkey chants. Because as far as I'm concerned, I say it all the time, it ain't about the players on the football pitch. Yeah, they get abused, but you can see by the fact that those players didn't come off the pitch, didn't really affect them. But Tyrone Mings, who a couple of years ago looked like he wasn't going to play football again in his career, he had some bad injuries, makes his debut for England. Why should his parents have to sit in the stand and listen to that? Why should Raheem Sterling's parents not be able to go to a game? Because they got to listen to that in the stand. And UEFA think they're doing something by putting giving them a 2-game ban, 12 months suspended. I get sick and tired of talking about it. They use football as a tool and say the problem's in football. It's not, the problem's in society. Racism's a problem in society. Look at them organisations, and those organisations have got no one of colour in any position that can do anything about this. So when they're coming up with their ideas of what the punishment should be, they're speaking to people. I watched Sky a couple of weeks ago. With all due respect to the people that were on the panel, there was Graham Souness, there was Roy Keane, there was Mourinho, and I think Gary Neville was on there, and they was asking them about this situation. Unfortunately, people can have empathy for this situation, but unless you've been racially abused, you know nothing about it.
This is about football, but I just want to share something because it's such an important issue to me. I feel passionate about it. And I believe in fairness and I believe in equality. But when I was in law school, I know nobody wants to hear about Fourth Amendment stop and search, but we were discussing Fourth Amendment stop and search with a friend of mine who was black. And I said, well, surely, the inconvenience of being stopped, if you catch a criminal, must outweigh the bad part of it. And he said, yeah, that's what I thought the first time I got pulled over. So then the second time I got pulled over, all right. The third time I got pulled over, I thought, what's going on? And the fourth time I got pulled over, I almost got arrested because I told the cop, what? I'm a black man, young black man in a nice car, therefore I must be a drug dealer? And that's when I realized, Les is right, sometimes you just can't relate to that. And I thought about it, I thought, he's right. I can't relate to that. I can't be, try and put myself in his position is difficult, which is one of the reasons I think, we all need to unite around this issue and try to get action.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. And a question, and then after this question, we'll actually open the floor. So if you do have a question, just raise your hand. Matt will come over with the microphone. Do wait for the microphone while we may be able to hear you in here in terms of the recording that will be going out. For those that want to watch later, we just want to make sure your question is heard. So if you can just hang on. So just raise your hands if you do have a question shortly. Final one for the moment then. Can we please stop sacking manager after manager?
From Mark Warburton.
We have had 20 plus managers and assistant managers. We've had 20 plus managers and assistant managers since 2006. Can we please stick with Warburton, win, lose or draw? I genuinely believe he has taken us in the right direction with his style of play. I'll come to you, Lee, as you move with the microphone.
I'll just say this. I think what we've been lacking is a DNA and a blueprint for how we take the club forward. This is exactly how we're going to be. And by the way, sometimes I hear you guys when we're playing out for the back going, that is the way forward. We have to go through the crucible on this, and sometimes we'll make mistakes going out. But if you notice, when we do play it out from the back, when we finally do, there's always acres of space there, when we get it out. So it's about developing the players that can play that way, and it's about bringing players through that can play that way. And by the way, this is where you really get the value out of players, because that's a Premier League style. And we need to produce players that can play in the Premier League. So top drawer, it's the way forward. Mark's been a fantastic addition to the club, and he has absolutely set this club on the right path.
In terms of the nervousness that Lee just spoke about, if you're feeling it from the crowd over certain playing out from the back aspects, is that a case where you have to speak to your players to reinforce that confidence to continue to do the right thing?
I've got to be careful how I answer this question, because what happened on Saturday resulted in from a 2-1 comfortable to 2-2 and 2 dropped home points. That's the situation. But the only way you learn is by a mistake. It's the only way any player will learn. So we will play out this season, I'll tell you now, in the coming games, and we will make a mistake and we may concede. I hope not. I hope it doesn't cost us any points, but it will happen. But you can't applaud a player for playing really good football, taking it bravely, in a tight area, dealing with the football, playing through the units and getting out and clapping him. And then when he makes a mistake, berating him. It's how we learn. So I think that the better the quality of player, as Lee said, the young ones coming through the academy who are comfortable playing in that style, taking a ball, brave, never reckless, then we're going to be in a good place. But they will make mistakes. I guarantee you now, everyone, be it a goalkeeper whose mistakes are highlighted, or be it a striker who can get away missing 4 or 5 chances, score the 5th, they will make mistakes. And we have to make sure we stick with them. And our job, Les, myself, Lee, all the people at the club, in terms of recruiting the right players who can deal with those mistakes. Because whatever job you're in, you make a mistake, you can feel bad about it. They do it in front of 25, 30, 35,000 people at Leeds, for example. So imagine your mistake mirrored that way, and social media and the pundits and Sky News, everything else has a go at you for doing it. You have a strong spine and a thick skin to deal with it, and they're the type of players we have to produce. So yes, give them time, be patient. If they do it too often, we have to change them. If I do it too often and pick them, I get sacked. Simple as that. And then I should be sacked, you're right.
I always take my cues from Les, and he's always calm, so it must be all right. Yeah.
Okay, if you'd just like to put your hands up if you do have any questions from the floor. First question there.
Yeah, is it working?
Yeah.
I've spoken to Les about this and Lee. Basically, it's all about the atmosphere at the ground, and an admin on a Facebook group which is Return the Loft to its past glory. Now, Les has expressed how much he used to enjoy attacking the Loft end, especially in the second half with the atmosphere, etc. And what I want to know, Mark, is how much of an advantage do you think the home fans can be if we can get a really good atmosphere in the Loft end like it used to be?
I've said this many times, I was very fortunate to come to the stadium in the best year, 75, 76. I was very fortunate to come to every home game. And I saw what the stadium can be like when a team are playing really well and successful, and in that year pushing Liverpool all the way to the title. So I've seen the atmosphere and how it impacts on players. And for us, the young ones, the Swansea game, we end up losing 3-1. We get the equaliser, and I think one team's going to win it. And the reaction of the crowd that night, under the lights, smell of the grass, was fantastic. Fantastic. And we have to do our job as players and staff to help you enjoy following the club and support and fill that stadium. That's the one target we've set this season, to fill the stadium as often as we possibly can, because that means you're enjoying it, and that means we're winning and we're in a good place. But the atmosphere for me is paramount, and it's not cheap words. the impact you can have on the players, especially the young ones, is huge. So I'm a huge supporter of what you say.
Okay, next question. Yes, please.
Hi. If we do move, what is the latest on the possibility of a 35,000 seat capacity at the new stadium, and are we happy with that? Personally, it fills me with horror, the idea with average crowds of 12 to 14, having a top tier closed. We talked about atmosphere, it'd be disastrous for the club.
I wouldn't be supportive of a 35,000 seater stadium. I think the magic number is somewhere between 28 and 30,000. If you look at clubs like Leicester and Southampton, when they moved, they were getting even less crowds than what we are right now. But what we need to do is plan for a championship. If we're in the Premier League, great, you'll fill 35,000, you'll fill 30,000. But championship, you won't. You'll get it initially because of the new stadium factor, but it'll dwindle away after the novelty wears off. But what you should get, is somewhere between 20 and 23,000. And in a 30,000 seat stadium, 20 to 23,000 can actually look good and gives you good atmosphere. But if you go 35,000, you got 12,000, 14,000 empty seats, and that's not conducive to a good atmosphere. And you actually get lesser crowds then because people come in and go, well, you just rattled around in there. But you want, at least with between 20 and 23,000, you feel like you're part of something.
Just a follow-up, go on.
Sorry, Lee, can we clarify how much say we as a club have in what that capacity eventually will be, given that it's a council-led initiative?
You mean, you also at Linford Christie? I have absolutely no idea right now because it's their process that they're going through. We put in our submissions about what we think, and they said they'll be going into further detail once they do this analysis that should be done sometime next year. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, if we don't like, let's say we do go through all this, and they say, well, this is what it's, we're going to build a 40,000 seat stadium, and we go, well, it really doesn't suit us. So who are you going to have there?
Okay.
Can I just to pursue that point, what are we as a club prepared to accept in terms of, you said already there's very little options on the table, and they want to build what they want to build.
Yeah, but that's the thing, they don't know what they want to build yet. So until they know what they want to build, we really can't answer the question. All I know is we got to do what's best for the club. So if it doesn't really doesn't satisfy our requirements, then there's no point in right now it's death by 1,000 cuts. Well, there's no point in actually going for slitting your jugular and then doing it all in one go because you got a stadium that you can't handle. So for me, it's like no, it's got to be the right deal for the club.
Okay, next question. George, your moment.
Hiya. I understand the importance of all the youngsters in the squad. However, how important do you think the experienced players are like Lee Wallace are to improving the youngsters and the squad?
Firstly, a round of applause for young George. Great question. Well done, George, mate.
I think Mark answered that a little bit earlier on, but I think when you look at the likes of Lee Wallace, I often say that your football club's as good as your senior players. And if you've got good senior players with good characters at your football club, you've got a chance of helping the ones that you want to bring through come through. And I think at this moment in time, I think Mark mentioned Lee Wallace, Mark Pugh, Angel, Jeff Cameron. We've got some good senior players with good characters in the change rooms at the moment that are benefiting those young players that we've got around the place.
And don't forget, George, that they all want the same shirt. So you have 22, 23 in a squad, and we can only pick 11 to start a game on a Saturday. Take the goalkeeper away, there's only 10 shirts available, outfield slots available. So that relationship is really key, because I want the shirt and Les wants the shirt, etc. But they're still mates and working together day in, day out. They go in, they train together every single day, they eat together, go to an away game, they're on the coach for 3 or 4 hours, they're in the hotel together. So they have to have that bond, but they're competitive animals who want the shirt. So it's getting the balance right, and as Les said, they're working really hard for that unity.
Okay, any further questions?
Hi, good evening. I was wondering, with the Boxing Day match at Reading being moved from an afternoon match to an evening match, was there any resistance from the club in having that fixture changed? Bearing in mind the difficulty fans would have with travelling to that fixture and getting transport sort of back to London on a Boxing Day evening.
What you mean for TV? Yeah, we have absolutely no. It's like it used to be even in the Premier League. If you said, well, we have this issue, even from a health and safety standpoint, but now it's like this is the contractual obligation we have to the broadcaster. The broadcasters are the one paying the money. You have to adhere to your contract. I mean, we've had stuff. The Fulham game is a great example. We're thinking we got to play Friday night on the back of an international weekend. You couldn't ask for a worse scenario for us when we got players going, to Bermuda and everywhere else. So it's not only from a fan standpoint, but from a player standpoint as well. And the league said that's your commitment that you make when we sign up to the broadcasting deal. So you have to fulfill your fixture.
Okay, any further questions? Got a couple here. We've got Gobi at the front.
Hi there. I wondered if there was a feeling within the team sometimes that we get hard done by with some of the refereeing decisions over the last few games, and it even stretches back to last season. Some of the penalty decisions and stuff we get. I just wondered what sort of feeling does it feel like it's a conspiracy or?
I think all three of them are desperate to answer this.
Do you ever get to see Lee in the stands on a match day? Can you see where Lee's sitting? Okay, right. So he gets very, very irate, and he's up and down he's up and down like a jack in the box. And in the last game, he was up and down and hammering what he thought was the assessor, and the geezer had nothing to do with assessing the game. So and he didn't tell Lee till the end. He was up and down. So
he never did tell me. Terry Springer told me. They wouldn't have an assessor. That guy was nothing other.
But no, we get irate, and we get lots of letters saying, we've made this mistake, we've made that mistake, but it's cost us 3 points, and there's not a lot we can do about it. Everyone says it evens itself out over a season. We don't feel like it is at the moment, but hopefully it'll turn for us at some stage.
He leaves it to me now, because when he did it, he got fined.
I used a few more choice words than Lee, and it didn't help me out.
Mark, how frustrating is that, particularly when you receive a letter afterwards saying, we got that one wrong?
Yeah, there's no, Lee, stop me if I'm going, but there's no consequence to their actions. So we get a letter back saying, sorry, the ref missed it, he must concentrate. Sorry, the opponent dived, it should have been a card for simulation. Sorry, but there's no consequence. And players get dropped, and managers get sacked, or coaches sacked, and attendances go down. And the margins are so fine. 3 points, 4 points, you move from 8th to 2nd or 8th to 3rd. There's huge implications on every decision. And you're right, it does feel. But you have to tell the players, be honest with them. Hard done by there, move on. You can't change the past, move on. You can't dwell on it. There's no point doing that. What you have to do is move on, and hopefully it's in the bank. And as Les said, you hope over the course of a season they do right themselves. Right now it doesn't feel that way, but fingers crossed it will change.
Okay, any further questions?
Hiya. Les, you mentioned that all of our players are assets and have their market value. I was just wondering, how do we accurately assess the market value of each of our players before we consider selling them?
I think that's, we have to see where they, we have to see and feel where they are, see what the offers that come in, and then we play around with the figures and say, right, okay, we think he's at this value. We could value someone at 15 million, but if someone's only offering 5, and we've got a couple of teams offering 5, we have to think to ourselves, are we going to sell at that price? Do we think it's the right price for that player, or are we going to sit out and hold on to him? But then you have the other side of the coin, that if the player gets wind of the fact that someone wants them, how happy do you keep them? So it's a double-edged sword. It's not as easy as just saying, right, we're not accepting that bid, because then the next thing's they're knocking on my door, they're knocking on Mark's door, saying, look, I want to go. Yeah.
And they're human. So anyone here, if I said to you, right, business A over the road wants to take you, and it's 5 times your salary, and then you come back to work and your boss says, no, you're staying put, sorry. What's your reaction? You'd be a bit peed off, I'd imagine, at the very least. And that's the fact of it. That's it, and Les has to deal with that, and they knock on the door, you know, so you have a player being paid here, but then the club will value him up here. Well, then you have to meet his wages. And his agent will be banging on the door. The agent will call the following day to say, I want to talk to you. Have to renegotiate his contract. So it's not as plain as the papers would make you think. There's so much involved in the process, and it's difficult.
Okay, any further questions?
Lee, at least on the Rangers Fantasy Island forum that I'm here to represent, there seems to be a little bit of confusion about whether the ground name change is a permanent thing or whether it's just for a year. Is it the Qpr Prince for just this season, or is that it forever?
No, it's not forever. What we said was we do it and evaluate it as it went along.
And just follow up, what is the reason for that there isn't a set period for that name change?
Because we actually don't know how it would work for a charity. You know, if it works well for Mark and you continue it on, but it might be, the whole idea is to raise awareness of, the issue doesn't need to have awareness raised, but the solution does. And there may come a time where actually he's driven as much value out of it as he possibly could. So you would move on. And depending on what else what came along, so it's about, is it really working for everybody? That's what we just need to evaluate on a year-by-year basis. Webby.
I mean, obviously we all agree that, like, if we're going to go out to a charity, that would be the charity that's closest to our hearts, like, as all QPR supporters. So are we saying that if it wasn't going to be the Qpr, it would then not revert back to Loftus Road, it would then go to another charity or something else?
Again, it would depend on how that would actually work for another charity. Is it worth doing? How would that charity actually be able to use it? Would it be worthwhile doing it? Or are we better off just putting it back at Loftus Road? Just so many questions. Because this was such a novel thing to do, and something really that no one's ever tried before, we're just in uncharted water right now. So it's just kind of a, let's play it by ear and see how it's going. A lot of people, it's funny, a couple of people said, oh, you've just done this to soften us up because you to sell it commercially. Like, no, if I could sell it commercially, I'm not going to soften you up. I'll tell you straight out, I'll sell it commercially. I don't need to soften you up for it at all, because any asset I can do to get value out of it, I'm going to do. However, in this instance, I think Dr. Prince gets much more value out of it than what the market would give us in terms of naming rights.
I hope Mark over there doesn't take any disrespect from what I've just said, because as a forum, we genuinely support it and we think it's a brilliant thing.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? A couple of questions over at the back. We'll come here first.
Good evening, gents. Question for Mark. I think it's apparent that everyone here is pleased with the job that you're doing and with the style of football that you've brought to Qpr Prince Foundation Stadium. However, we're a third of the way into the season and we're yet to keep a clean sheet. What do you put that down to, and how do you plan to address that without diluting the football philosophy?
I think how do I start? We defend as a team. So it's easy. I'll try and give an example. You watch the Leeds game, and 10 minutes in, the guy broke into the box, if you remember, and he had a great chance and put it over the bar. Do you remember that opportunity that they had 10, 11 minutes into the game? Now, you can sit there, and I guarantee had he scored, every supporter would say, where's our centre-halves gone? They disappeared on the day yet again. We missed a 2-on-1 tackle in front of the dugouts, and he ran off the back of our midfield. So the blame lies elsewhere. And the defenders are the easy ones to blame. We defend as a team. We defend from the front, we press with our strikers, and we look to have our shape and block off the passing avenues. And then we look to work together to block them. So I agree with you. We've made silly mistakes, stupid mistakes, 5 penalties given away. And what happened on Saturday, not about Naki, that happened, and that type of mistake we have to eradicate. Absolutely agree with you. But don't point fingers, I don't mean you, but don't point fingers at just a defender or the defensive unit, because we do it as a team. We don't score goals unless our back players are brave enough to take the ball from the goalkeeper, unless our goalkeeper is brave enough to give it to them in the first place. So we work together as a team, offensively and defensively. So I think, totally agree, we have to work, and we are working tirelessly to to try and get the elusive clean sheets. And we want as many as possible, obviously. But we also attack teams. And I mean this very sincerely. If we won every game 3-2 the rest of the season, I'd happily take it, as I'm sure you would as well. I'm not saying that in a naive way, but it's very important that we allocate blame appropriately and we work together as a team to get the right end result.
Okay, incredibly, we've been going for an hour and a half already, so if they're the last few questions, we'll come to you.
Just wanted to clarify, I wasn't saying that you should be sacked over the last game. I was saying our last manager was the right one to go. But I wanted to ask, with Ryan Manning this season, his hunger has just, he's suddenly becomes such a different player, and I wondered why that was. Is that because what you were saying, the atmosphere that we've got in the training ground, in the locker room now, or is it because we had Luke last year, who was also very hungry, which is why maybe others didn't shine so much?
Yeah, he's a young player who's gone out on loan. He's desperate to impress and play for QPR, and obviously Les and Lee know better than I do at the start of this season. Excuse me. He's a talented player, and the arrival of A. Lee Wallace puts pressure on him. How does he respond? Does he fold under that pressure, or does he respond really positively? And he sees Lee's arrival as a real challenge to him, and he's risen to the challenge. And every day in training, he is as you see him on a Saturday. And the robustness of the player, touch wood, always available. You know, you want those players who can play 40-plus games in a season for you, you know, train every single day, always be available. It's a massive asset to have. So he's a talented young boy who's working really hard, who's got loads of development potential still to come, but he has to keep on working. And the biggest danger is that these young players read the papers and read the social media. So it's true, you know, all these clubs suddenly want him. And it's that type of thing. Put your head down, work hard, and everything else will naturally fall into place. But all credit to him for the work he's done so far this season. He has, yeah. I was trying to leave him here, by the way.
Thank you. And next question?
Hi there. My question's for Les. I'm sure, like most other fans, I'm delighted that the way that Eze's come on and the way Chair has come on, and we see prospects coming from the younger ranks of players. Les, have you set yourself any targets in terms of like how many players you want to come forward maybe in the next 2 to 3 years, or are you measuring success maybe in a different way?
No, we've made no bones about we want players to come through the system. And I think the likes of Paul Hall, Andrew Impey, Chris Ramsey, all the boys in the academy are doing a fantastic job in preparing these guys. I mean, we look at the Ezes and the DLSs of this world, and we've had to do it in a roundabout, different way. We've had to take players that have been released from clubs who've perhaps had a little bit of experience of youth team football, not quite made it in the first team, and we're taking those players in and trying to polish them up and make them into the players that we're seeing today. The way the EPPP system works, unfortunately, players that we have in our 14s and our 13s who we think have got immense talent and perhaps would play for our first team won't get to our first team because they get snapped up by the bigger clubs before we get a chance to really see them. So we're having to do it in a different way, but so far it's been okay for us. It's been a little bit successful if you look at Ilias and Eze, and we're hoping that we're going to have to do that a little bit more before we can sort out this EPPP system. And if we can sort that out, then the ones that we've got coming through the system will actually get there in the end.
Okay, any further questions? Yes, last question here, just in the middle.
Just going back to the players leaving because of being offered higher wages, etc. elsewhere, what do the clubs think about perhaps the FA introducing wage capping, which would then stop us having to sell so many of our players because they haven't got that carrot dangled in front of them?
From my perspective and the job that I do, it'd be an absolutely brilliant thing if the FA could do that. But from a player perspective, the money's out there for them to earn. When does it change? You know, we've been saying for years it's got to stop, it's got to stop, it's got to stop. It just keeps getting higher and higher all the time. And I think I can only use Arsenal as an example. I think when things weren't going too well for Wenger, the supporters started acting with their feet, they stopped going to the stadium. And then people, even when people that had bought season tickets stopped going to the games, and when you were seeing them on TV live, half the stadium was empty. So the clubs had to do something about it. I think the more teams and supporters go to stadiums and are not getting value for money, the crowd might dwindle in these midweek games, maybe on the weekends, and then the FA, the whole system might do something about it and say, right, let's bring this wage cap in so people feel like they're getting value for money. But it would be a good thing if we got to that.
Okay, any further questions? Okay, thanks very much. We're now going to conduct a raffle. As I said, when you arrived, all your names were entered into the hat for 3 prizes. So the names will be drawn out, and then you can take it from there. Okay, so firstly, from the raffle, and this is for 2 tickets to QPR v Preston on the 7th of December, plus a 3-course meal for 2 here at Westwood Sports Bar after the game. And if we can go round to the manager, Mark Warburton, to draw a name out. If you can announce the lucky winner. William Wall. Congratulations, William, if you'd like to come forward. Yeah, absolutely. So he's donated his prize as a season ticket holder. He's donated his prize to put up for auction, with all funds going to the Qpr Prince Foundation. A big round of applause. A fantastic gesture. Thank you very much. Okay, next up, well, you've put pressure on the others now, haven't you? Can't accept their prize, can they? Okay, next up, and we won't feel less of you if you keep the prize. This is for a 2019-20 shirt signed by the QPR squad. And Les, if you can draw a name out of the hat, please. Harry Wilkinson. Congratulations, Harry. If you'd like to receive your signed shirt from Les Ferdinand. Many congratulations. And finally, for £30 of QPR cash, the final name from CEO Lee Hoos.
CJ Mullen.
CJ Mullen. Many congratulations, CJ. Okay, thank you, CJ. And just before we depart, we're going to have a final word. This is from the Westwood Sports Pub and Kitchen General Manager, Zach Potter, who's going to come up and say a couple of words. They've been fantastic hosts for us this evening, so we are hugely grateful. A round of applause for Zach.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming down. Thank you to QPR for putting on this forum here at Westwood. I think it's mentioned a couple of times how important the Qpr Prince Foundation and the work they do, and how they do a fantastic job. We wanted to try and see what we can do something to the foundation and QPR. So some of you might have seen a slip on the tables. Every home for QPR, we will be putting on a special pizza. So QPR, and 50% of the revenue of each pizza sold will be going towards the Qpr Prince Foundation. Thank you. But yeah, like I said, it's fantastic to see you all here. Hopefully we'll see you all again on game days. But yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. Lovely gesture here at Westwood Sports Pub and Kitchen. Okay, and just finally a reminder, when you do leave, there will be a bucket collection for the Kyan Prince Foundation. So if you do have any spare change or the type that fold and would like to donate them, it will be greatly received by the foundation. Thanks very much once again for coming this evening, for all your questions submitted in advance and on the night. And finally, a word of thanks to CEO Lee Hoos, to Director of Football Les Ferdinand, and to Manager Mark Warburton. And if you would like to come up and speak to the guys to get photos, autographs, have a quick chat before they go, you are more than welcome to. Thanks again for attending. Much appreciated.